I need you to hear me on this point. Do not let what God intended to be a lesson turn into a label for you. Don't ever let it happen. Because here's the thing. We're all going to experience negative things in life. We're all going to experience some turmoil. But the difference between those who fight and those who fold lies in your ability to deal with that thing, that negative thing, and not allow it to become a label for you in life. Here's the point that I want to bring to you today. Not all turbulence you experience in life is trauma. Not all turbulence in trauma. It is trauma. But here's the thing. We often, we experience a thing and we beeline to a community of people who validate us and see us. But like, we are the most socially aware generation in the history of the world. But at the same time, we're also the most anxious, the most suicidal. Something's not right. And I think it's because we've commodified this idea of hurt. We've commodified harm. There are people who've monetized the harm and made it a commodity so that trauma is trending. And when trauma is trending, it actually makes it a little bit more difficult to find real healing. What do I mean? So Dr. Laura Anderson, who is a self-proclaimed, how does she put it? I think a church hurt or church trauma expert, I believe. And she is a doctorate, so let's put that out there. Dr. Laura Anderson says this about trauma. She says, trauma is not what happens to you. It's your body's response to what happens to you. It's subjective. It can be anything that's too much, too fast, too soon. This is a direct quotation from one of her latest publications. And I just have to say, that type of rhetoric is emotionally and philosophically lazy, because it puts what you're thinking and saying about trauma in the most subjective and comprehensive. Anything too fast, too soon, too whatever, anything you want to say is traumatic, and I can't tell you otherwise. And that it's philosophically cowardly, because it puts you in a place where whatever you say goes. You are the only referee. There's no other referee who can come and challenge your thinking. And that, my friend, is how cults are created, where really deep trauma happens. And I always find it funny how in this whole deconstruction thing and this whole boundaries movement, we wind up setting boundaries from things or deconstructing from things and then actually just rebuilding a fresher, more untouchable version of the thing we call ourselves running from or deconstructing from or setting boundaries aside from. But the real thing about strength is that real strength is not found in a need to have every circumstance you're ever in validate your feelings. Real strength is actually found in the ability to cope with whatever is happening around you, despite how it might be making you feel. That's real strength and real perseverance. And I think that's the problem with deconstruction, is that you're left with nothing, which is not sustainable. And so you inevitably wind up building different smelling versions than the very thing you're calling yourself walking away from. It makes me think of this story. There was this little girl named Tanya. She was 18 months old, and her mother brought her to their local neighborhood playground like they always did. And she set her down and was hovering over her for a little bit. You know how parents do these days. And decided to walk away because she saw one of her friends come to the park as well, and then one of her mom friends. And so she walked over and was talking to her mom friend for just 1-2 minutes, not being neglectful, not watching Tanya or whatever, but just having a normal conversation. And then she looks back over after about 2 minutes pass, and she sees Tanya slightly in the distance, and she's painting. And she's like, who gave my child paint? She's painting with red paint. And she goes over and she's like, who gave my, hold on, I'm going to finish this conversation in a second. I got to go check on my child. I can't believe somebody done gave my child some paint. She beelines over to where Tanya's at. And as she gets closer, she realizes she's actually swirling blood. She's swirling around blood from her own finger, which she has bitten off because Tanya, at 18 months old, they discovered, does not experience pain. And here's the thing. Tanya's inability to experience pain is the most dangerous thing to her existence. And you are the same way. When you have an inability to experience tumultuous situations and turbulence in life in a way where you can walk through them, you are in way more danger than that pain could have ever produced for you. It's way more dangerous to live a life where you cannot experience pain. If you're trying to accomplish great things in the world, you will experience some level of struggle. It's inevitable. I don't care what kind of cards you had stacked for you in the beginning of life, you will experience struggle. And so instead of beelining to a cult that just affirms you and says that you're worthy and great and all those great things and just sees you and leaves you in your trauma, instead of allowing your trauma to label you and brand you as a person, instead, I think you do really well to begin to ask yourself this question as you walk forward. Am I walking in my wounds, or am I walking in wisdom? I'm going to say that again because I need you to write it down. Am I walking in my wounds, or am I walking in wisdom? I think the answer that you want is obvious, but you need to be able to be honest with yourself so that you can make sure you are a person who is not allowing things that God intended to be a lesson to turn into a label.